It definitely wasn't a safe idea. You have to have an understanding of something in order to criticize it. One of the most valuable things I did early in my career was...
Welcome to In Her Direction. I'm your host, Brittany Doohan, and we're joined today by Diana Weisman. She is an award-winning creative director. She's led creative and advertising and branded content for companies such as Bustle, Nylon, Popsugar, Conde Nast, and most recently, Code and Theory. Thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you, Brittany.
In this episode, we talk about how to put you into your creative work while utilizing data to make it stick. In talking about how to put yourself in your work, what does that mean, and how do you do that as a creative director?
I've really come to learn over the years that putting yourself in your work is about a lot more than just the output looking like you. It's about sort of a whole ecosystem, and being engaged and interested in that process, that creative process. So, treating really every project, no matter how big or small, as part of a chance to put yourself in the process. So that could be through your ideas, it could be your work ethic, it could be, simply how you communicate to other teams. I think people are going to remember a lot more about you, after the project is over than just what the output was. When I first started, in my junior design days, I was working on, really small, seemingly small things, web banners, for instance, not a lot of room for creativity design-wise, but I like to write. So we didn't have a copywriter. A lot of it was meant to be lorem ipsum until we hired a copywriter. And I would just put in my own headlines. These are the 3 stunning boots for summer, trying to showcase who I was as a creative and how I thought about things. Nobody asked me to do it. That was my way of putting myself in it, in any way that I could. The way I put myself into work today is that I try to be the person in the room who is always going to ask, why are we doing this? Why are we, making this ad? Why are we trying to reach this certain type of viewer? Because I think a lot of people can lose sight of that. So it's sort of evolved into starting off with those really small projects, making them the best they possibly can. And then by the time you get to a big project and you've done all of those things, you can start to really chip away at, is this a great idea? Is this something that I feel represents, my voice? And is this something that's going to be successful? But I think starting out, it's really about putting yourself into it in a way that isn't necessarily about the creative.
I always think of myself as a creative on what's on my Instagram page or my portfolio, but then you think about all the work that you've touched and your ideas and the organizational processes that you've come up with. There's so many ways that you can put you in your creative work that I never personally really took the time to think about as well. So
yeah. And I think too, it's such a joy to think that there are no small projects, really. I mean, every small, seemingly small project is an opportunity. And that's just always how I've looked at it. So I've always had amazing opportunities because I have, from the small web banner to the, full ad campaign, I've shown up in any way that I can.
You never know what can come from a small project or what you can learn. And, you're never too good for a project. So that's
right.
cool.
And it's hard. I mean, a lot of young people ask me, they say, I'm in a job where I'm doing, something I don't want to be doing. And I've been there. They say it's what I'm working on isn't glamorous. But the thing is, it's really possible to make it glamorous, to make it something that you can feel proud of. You just have to find that way in. It might not be through creative. It might be through some other way, like organization, collaboration, or the way that you present the work. If you're presenting something like web banners, is there a cooler, more interesting, more creative way to present that work? Just constantly trying to find that way in, I think, is the key.
Yeah. And it's a way to learn other skills that you might be good at that you may not have
Yes.
known
Very true.
previously. So in the same vein of putting you in your creative work, how do your past and present interests and hobbies influence your work today?
I have had many interests, many obsessions over the course of my life. People who know me know that I get very excited about the things that I love. So that's changed a lot over time. And even though some of the obsessions might be short-lived, they never fully go away. I kind of just store them in a box and take them out again when I sort of need to reference them. The one uh, thing that I love that has really stayed a constant throughout my life has actually been gaming. It's something I've been doing since I was very, very young and has just stayed with me no matter my age, no matter my life circumstance, no matter what I was going through. And it really was, I think, my first foray into what advertising kind of is. I mean, it was my first foray into role playing, which I think is a lot of advertising. It's really just, role playing someone else's story to kind of reach people. Um, and gaming really taught me how to think in terms of storytelling, interactivity, puzzles, deep character creation and lore, shaping an experience, an interactive experience. So it really showed me how powerful, it can be when an experience stays with you for a very long time and you think about it again and again and you use it as your reference. And that's something that I really strive for in my work. I want people to feel that kind of feeling, that they would want to go back to it again, or they would think about it long after they'd seen it. I recently pitched a campaign to a gaming console, and it was like a dream come true for me. Felt very full circle. And I think something that was so special about that pitch was that I kind of, without thinking, just used a lot of women in my mocks, and showed female gamers and the amazing edge and personality and excitement that women bring to the gaming space. And it was such a joy to present that to the client. I think I got a little like sentimental, probably too much so in the meeting, because I was like, this means so much to me. So I think they could feel it too, which was really great. But it's so beautiful that gaming is so is so prevalent in life right now. I mean, everybody is a gamer, from your Candy Crush playing grandma to the New York Times games. We got the kids are on Roblox, and everybody is doing it. And I think it's so great for storytelling, for content, creation. It just has so much potential. So it's just something that has really shaped the way that I think, how I approach everything, really, is just through that lens. I fully encourage every creative to find a game, because I really do believe it like makes you a better storyteller for sure. I'm gonna get you on something.
Okay, what games do you play? I mean, that was my follow-up. I was curious.
So I truly think there's just a type of game for everybody. So we just have to suss out what type of gamer you are.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so there's like cozy games, which are very much like setting up rooms, taking care of like, kind of like farming games, like where
Mm.
you decorate a room, or I play this one game called Unpacking, where you literally just unpack boxes and you put things away. That is one style. Then there's like role playing games where you go through an adventure as a character. I could see you doing that as well.
Mm.
You slay the dragon, or you go into the cave or whatever as your custom character.
Yeah.
Or I mean, I don't know. There's just so many. It would take forever to go through them all, but I feel like I could see you a fantasy gamer potentially, maybe a little cozy. I don't know. We just met also, so this is like almost a mystic reading or something. I'm just getting from your aura.
I mean, we could have a whole episode maybe on that. And what kind of
Yeah,
gamer are
we
you?
will.
I must know what kind of gamer I am, honestly. I must find this out. Well, I'm intrigued, and I'll take any of your recs because you seem like you've been doing it for a while and know what you're talking about. So
Yeah, that's the great thing about being a creative director, is that you can iterate off of inspiration. It's not that you're, you know, oh, I love games, so I'm going to go make games. Sometimes that's the case, but I think it's about just like recognizing when a specific piece of inspiration is going to unlock something for you and
Hmm.
kind of set you on a path, these tiny little breadcrumbs that you can kind of sprinkle throughout your work. And it's not always going to be overt, it's not always going to be obvious. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have to be that, oh, every, fashion campaign is going to be about character creation and weapons and modding and all that stuff. It's just knowing when it's the right time to pull that specific piece of inspiration out.
There's been times where I'm pulling inspo and I just feel like, oh, am I copying all these people by taking all this inspiration and making it into my own? But I think one, you are becoming inspired by what you are picking out. So that is you. You're collecting, you're curating, and that
Hmm.
is your collection. And it's representative of what you're interested in. But also, as long as you're not completely copying what you take and you're using it as like a seed and a branch to branch off into something else or do it in your own way. I think that is the key there.
I used to have a lot of fears about copying. It's definitely, I'm sure, something that people think about all the time, creatives think about. But it wasn't until I actually got into watching a lot of fashion documentaries that my mindset kind of changed. There's this great documentary called Dior and I. Raf Simons as the creative helm at Dior at the time. And he, like in many fashion documentaries that I've seen, he goes back into the archives. A lot of really great creative directors do when they start at a fashion house. Back into the archives, look at what the past designers and heads of the house have done, and directly reference what they've done. Take actual sketches and bring it to the current table. They'll also be inspired by, I'm pretty sure in the documentary, Ralph was very inspired by a painting, and he fully took that entire painting and put it on a dress.
Mm.
So, this idea of, being fearful of copying and worrying that every single thing you have to do has to be original. All you have to do is look at amazing creative directors and see the work that they're doing. And you'll find, like I did in watching so many of these docs, I kind of like had a marathon and just hit them all back to back. Is that references and inspiration is such a great starting point and can really open the door to um, so many beautiful things. So I think like when you look at the greats and you look at what has inspired them, you'll see that inspiration is such a core of what they create. And the fears of, you feeling like you have to always make net new really start to fade.
Totally. But also, it's like we're surrounded by other people's work, even if it's something as small as a chair you see on the side of the road or
Yeah,
something, where
right.
it's like it's almost impossible to create something new because you're always influenced by everything around you. And, but it can turn into so many things like degrees of separation where, it could feel new to the world and to you. But it was always inspired by something, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, we talked a little bit about your personal interests and then some stuff that you've worked on and pitched. Can you share a time when your personal interests or identity shaped a campaign in an unexpected way?
I had just seen a film, Everything Everywhere All at Once, when I had started work for a campaign for Loewe. And what really stuck with me about that film was that so many of the effects were done in camera, not with CGI. So there was something really beautiful and inspiring about, the handcrafted nature of what those directors, the Daniels, did in that film. And it really reminded me that you can create something so brilliant, so imaginative, with really limited tools, as long as, you believe in it and the vision is strong. So the project for Loewe, they had asked that we make, just a really fun social film, TikTok, basically. And I thought to myself, what is TikTok but a set of really innovative cuts and, oftentimes, practical effects done in camera. Um, so, artful edits is really the core of, TikTok and Instagram. So, I started thinking about how can I bring the spirit of that movie that I just saw and loved into the piece I was about to work on. So I spent a long time on the storyboard. I had to really plan out every single moment. And the moments that were really key, of course, were transitioning our talent, which was the comedian Patty Harrison, who's incredible, transitioning Patty through, multiple looks. That was, the crux of it. It's important that we're showing off the clothing. So, I decided to anchor everything in a single doorway that Patty would pass through in order to transition her looks. Lauren Machin, who is our set designer, was incredible in that she was able to make the door and the door frame freestanding, which I didn't realize was very difficult. Um, and, we had to, of course, film and edit Patty, as she made her changes through the store. Another really fun element was that the bag, the Loewe bag that we were featuring, had a sort of like a balloon texture, almost like rubbery, shiny texture, latex vibe. Although it was leather, it was beautiful, beautiful bag. So I wanted a balloon to pop and reveal the bag. Balloons also were like a lot. There was a lot of balloons in everything, everywhere all at once. It was so great. Confetti as well. Have you seen it, Brittany? Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
it blew my mind. I
Yeah.
loved it.
Key like video upper echelon. So I wanted a balloon to pop, but getting it to pop and then the bag come out, we were trying to figure out how to make that work. So Lauren, again, being incredible, she stuck a pin, she taped a pin straight up on the ground. And we basically just took turns throwing balloons at the pin to try to get it to pop. So, as you can imagine, it took a million tries. Like the balloons just left our hand and we had no control over where it went. But finally we got it. It landed right on the pin, burst into a million pieces perfectly. Leah Winkler was our director. She was also amazing because she was like everywhere all at once. Like I would think, oh my God, we didn't get it. And I turn around and she would just be there like, we got it. So it was such a group effort. And I think like the whole team just believed in it so much. And that was so key. Like nothing seemed stupid. Nothing was like, no one was asking me, well, how are we going to do that? It was like, yes, let's go. Let's figure it out. And then when I handed the footage to Amy Eakin, who is our amazing video editor, I told her, this is the inspiration film. I want the sounds to be super weird. Like I want rubbery sounds. I want children laughing, really like ramp up the weirdness. And she got it like the first cut was like absolutely incredible. So, I mean, that's just like my favorite thing about being a creative director is like, you have a vision, you have a piece of inspiration, and you just get all the best people around you to make that vision happen. It's like they're almost like tiny pieces of glass, and you kind of like you pick one up and you go, okay, that's perfect, and you set it in, and it just makes this really gorgeous mosaic at the end. And so I'm so proud of that piece, but I'm also just so in love with the inspiration, film. I hope, that it's something that the Daniels would say, okay, we bless this, So that was, a campaign that I just absolutely loved pulling out something from my box and kind of putting it in there.
Are you on the campaigns you work on oftentimes the one choosing the people that you work with?
Yeah. For most of my career, I have selected the crew, and that is such a joy for me because I love creating like my mini Avengers, like for a project. Like I absolutely love meeting other creatives, finding out what their passions are, and then just kind of connecting the dots. And when a project comes along my desk that I think would be perfect for somebody, I cannot wait to get them on it and get us all together. I think that another very important element of being a creative director is knowing when you're not the expert on something. I feel very, very happy and excited to say, this is something I want to do, but I'm not an expert in it. I need to pull in the big guns. And I pride myself on my self-awareness, really. the ability to know that there are other people out there who can make something really great. It doesn't always have to be you. I think that's another amazing thing about being a creative director is, you come up with the vision and you sort of then say, okay, like we need people to execute it. I used to think it meant you had to do every single thing. Sometimes we do. I mean, I'm sure you do too, Brittany. Like you're director, but you're also prop stylist and you're also acting, and that those projects are really fun. But it's also about teamwork and finding your team, your people.
Oh, 100%. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, you're totally right. There are times when I'm doing everything, but there's also times when I get the chance to hire. Definitely depends on budget.
Mhm, yeah.
And also the scope. If it's we do some, short, easy kind of scrappy social videos where I
Yeah.
don't, necessarily need a whole big crew, even though sometimes we do it. But it's like, even though I can do everything, I know what I'm not the best at, and I
Yeah.
know what it needs to take, what it takes to make it the best and who needs to work on that. And it's kind of interesting in a time where everyone's expected to have multiple skills that are
Very
multiple
true.
jobs,
Yeah.
where you're like, okay, sure, I can set up an audio for a podcast that'll sound okay, but I'm not an audio engineer. And if you hire someone better than me, it will sound incredible. Like, you have to understand this.
Yeah. And
But
then we have to really always be the ones like advocating for that strong creative element. I need a director in here who's going to be able to do that. I need, really being the person who um like pushes for those needs, because there are plenty of people who do not. I see it. And yeah, I think it's super important that you're like very self-aware, but also very vocal about what it is that you need for a project to be successful. And then the
yeah.
client says no, and then you do it anyway. But, trying is always important.
Yeah, you got to give it a shot.
Yeah.
Okay, so in you talking about popping these balloons, it's kind of like a creative risk. So what's another creative risk that you are proud that you took?
I pitch a lot of ideas that I don't personally know how to execute. And we were kind of chatting about this is that, I'm very self-aware. I know when I'm not the expert on something. I have no ego about passing it off to someone who is. My job is to have the vision and then I help guide it to the right people. So, uh, you know, that being said, I think one of the biggest examples of a risk that I took was a TikTok series that we did for Chewy granola cereal. I had seen this one video going viral, Jacquemus bags rolling around, driving around in Paris. But so when I saw these bags driving through the streets and all the discourse about was it real, did they actually make these? That was it for me. I knew that there is something here. The fact that people are arguing in the comments on if these are real cars or not, it was so bold and really attention grabbing. So when the Chewy brief came along, their only ask was, we want bold and we want attention grabbing. So I said, okay, this is it. I had no idea technically how to pull it off. It definitely wasn't a safe idea, especially because the target market for the target audience for Chewy was really moms and kids, and I'm neither of those things. So, uh, you know, I also, in pitching this idea, kind of had to tell client, if we do this, you're not going to see anything on set. It's all going to be, digitally rendered. And that's eventually, for spoiler alert for those at home, those bags were not real. They were digitally rendered. It was VFX. But, I had to explain to them, you're not going to see anything when we film this. It's all going to be in post. So you really have to trust. And the way that they trusted me was me just pitching it really hard. I had lots of references. I had lots of mocks that I did in Photoshop. I had a really clear POV on, what the client wanted and how we would execute that with VFX. And also just really explain to him, like, this type of content is going to take off. And if you're smart, you will get on this trend with us. So luckily they were smart. And we got the business, and I brought in an artist who goes by Shakespeare. He's now a very dear friend and collaborator, and he was the expert. I mean, he not only knew how to do it, but he made it so. Can I curse on here? He made it look so good. The campaign really landed right as that trend exploded. And I think I'm so proud of the work because I think it looked very different from what a lot of people were doing. And it just was, it's crazy, honestly, to me that it happened because it required so much trust. The client had to trust us. My team had to trust me. I had to trust, the creatives that I brought in to help execute it. So there was just a lot of, it could have been, who knows, it could have been really bad. So that was definitely like a risk, but, I just knew it was going to be great. I just knew it in my gut. So I just kept, I think half of it is like delusion. You have to just tell yourself like it's going to be amazing. And it was wonderful. It was wonderful to add a little bit of weirdness to something that could have been very, moms and kids eating cereal and keeping it really standard. So that definitely is one of my bigger risks, but it worked out.
Next question.
Okay.
How do you balance client expectations and feedback with your creative vision?
It's not easy, but it gets easier. I think my first step is really acknowledging that my ideas and my creativity mean nothing if they don't get the client what it is that they want and are looking for. It doesn't matter how beautiful or how clever my work is. At the end of the day, I have to start at the end goal for the client, and then sort of work backwards. So if the client's goal is to get people to sign up for something, you know, my creative vision starts to ask, how can I make that sign up the coolest, most fun experience possible? How can I make signing up for this thing synonymous with whatever is hot right now? Like, how can I make this sign up like Labubu? There's plenty of people, I've seen it, who will put a sign up on a website and put some designs on it and make it pretty and then call it a day. That's just not how I approach things. So I think that's the fun of working with clients, is really finding unexpected ways to get to their goal. I mean, it's almost like a game. The second step that I take is really arming myself with knowledge and data as much as I can to support my vision. One of the most valuable things I did early in my career was become really curious about why decisions are made. I asked questions. I sat in on meetings that weren't mine. I looked at the data of, whatever company I was working for at the time. So if I was working for like a digital publisher, I would look at who is our audience, what is she about? What is she interested in? And watch how our users actually behave. Um, because I think the more that you understand the why, the more confident you'll be when you're pitching ideas, and the more trust you'll earn, because people will know that it's coming from a really informed place, not just a place of, I think this is going to look really pretty, because that isn't always going to work for a client. Using data is also a really delicate art. I think I'm not going to, put in a stat about people loving dogs just to get a dog in a shoot. That's not what it's about. You don't want to force a stat just to justify something, but I really use data to spark new thinking. Okay, how can I, approach this sign up sheet in a different way based on how people want to interact with signups, that sort of thing. So really using data to spark new thinking, but also validate maybe an idea that I already had, and explain why it's going to be successful.
Sometimes I am guilty of thinking, oh, but this is so pretty. You need to kind of take a step back and be like, maybe this doesn't work, even though I'm really excited about the way this looks, or, whatever it is. But it's important that the end product is going to work for the client. So it's a good
Yeah, I,
reminder.
I love working for clients, honestly. And it doesn't always start that way. And some clients are better than others, but I love a challenge. I think that's also why I loved the Chewy campaign, because I'm not normally a creative who works in that category, with moms and kids brands. So I loved being able to find a way to make them something really cool that they might not have thought of.
Yeah, totally. In talking about data, how do you think about data and strategy, not as a constraint, but as a creative tool?
In all my work, I try to use data to inform my creative decisions, but really never so much than in my time at Code and Theory. At Code, I'm really challenged to think about my work as more than just individual pieces. I'm encouraged to think about it as a framework. So, when you're early in your career, it's really easy to focus on that one asset that you're making, the video, the article, the graphic. But over time, you really learn that the most impactful creative doesn't just live in one asset or in one moment. It really should fit into a larger system. And because of that system, it can be expanded on. From the tiniest web banner to, the largest billboard in Times Square, from, the individual Instagram post to the influencer campaign. That's what a framework is. And, it's a way to really make sure that all of your assets and all of your ideas always come back to context, to consistency. And that gives it room to grow, depending on the need. So it's really like a touchstone. And data and strategy help build that system. So instead of it being limiting, it gives you a clear picture of who you're speaking to and what actually matters to them. And that's the core of your creative idea. So that context really allows you to be more creative, I think, not less, because you're not starting net new every time. You're making things that are rooted in something and that you can always go back to and say, okay, we're not just sticking type on an Instagram post. We are thinking about how this fits into our framework and how this relates back to our core creative idea. So I really hope to keep building better frameworks in my work to come. And that's how I'm going to always be thinking about it. It's not just about individual designs. And I think the new era of design is one of this larger thinking versus small piecemeal assets. And that's really exciting because, it gives us more time to be truly creative and to truly shape an idea versus, being bogged down in these micro tasks. So I love data and strategy, but it's taken on a whole new form, I think, not only in this new role that I have at Code and Theory, but in the larger landscape of how design is changing as a whole.
So you're talking about gaming, definitely included in some of the technologies that we can use in the world today. But how do you leverage emerging technology like AI, VR, et cetera, to elevate your work?
Yeah, I definitely keep a very light hand on as many, emerging programs and tools that I can. ChatGPT, Claude, Midjourney, Runway, 11 Labs is a great one too. I'm not super deep in all of them, truthfully. I'm still learning. I'm still cautiously optimistic about, all of these tools. But I do believe that you have to have an understanding of something in order to criticize it, in order to break it, to, expand on it. So it is very overwhelming. But I found that I think the best way to get comfortable with all of these tools is really to talk to people. Get back to talking to real people who use them and who are experts in them, designers, creative technologists. I'm always asking my coworkers, how are you using this? What's working? What's overrated? It's those conversations with real people that have gotten me a little bit further along in using those programs. But from a technical standpoint, I think I'd recommend that, people challenge themselves to just start using these tools to just make something, even if it's not great, even if you don't post it. Just get that hands-on experience so that you can get good at prompting, even the base knowledge of how to structure inputs. That's all super important. And I think whether, you're working with image gen tools, voice synthesis tools, you're just a lot more powerful when you have a base understanding. So you don't need to be an engineer, but just an understanding of how, to speak the language of these tools, I think makes you more agile. Again, you don't have to necessarily use them for everything, but I think just a base understanding is super, super important. And I think ultimately, the future belongs to the ones who have a community around these tools. So like I said, just never forgetting that, talking to people, and that, creativity is like really a community sport. It's a team sport. It's not a solo endeavor. I don't think it'll ever be a solo endeavor with just a machine, because there's just so much out there and so many more people out there who are going to be able to expand on what you're trying to do.
Just like the whole sort of theme of what we're talking about today and putting you in your work, where it's like that's what makes your work so interesting and special, and stands out because it's little pieces of you from your whole life and your childhood and what you're interested in, and like that's what makes it so unique.
Yeah. And just learning, like there's always more to learn. And it, like I said, it's very overwhelming.
Hmm.
Speak to a lot of creatives who want to either say, I'm not going to touch it, or I'm fully going to dive in. And I think it's just talk to as many people as you can about how they use it.
So in talking about AI, how do you think new tools like AI or immersive media impact personal creative voice?
I think that creative voice is really something that has to be cultivated independently of tools. At the end of the day, these are tools. And your voice, like you said, Brittany, it's a tapestry. It's a mosaic of, your experience, your taste, your interests. So, once a voice is developed, I think AI can absolutely amplify it. But I think it really has to start with you and your life experience. A great example of this is, there's a photographer, Charlie Engman, who I followed for a while, and has a really, he has a lens that is very recognizable, and his work is very clear. His aesthetic is very clear. But he uses AI now, to amplify his work, his photographic work, in a way that is still so unmistakably his. Once you see one of his images, you know it's from him. And I think that's not because of the tool. It's really about his creative voice behind it. So, that is super exciting to see how artists with a strong creative voice are using these tools. In contrast, there are artists, like Minaya Tairu, who has used these tools and seen how they can also limit um, visual representation. So in her work, she really exposes how AI, doesn't really treat all creative voices equally. She has shown in some of her projects that generative tools can, distort or even erase Black women's features. So, like, such as their hair, not knowing how to output that visually. So her work is one that really, is about the biases that are embedded in the data that we have to be very aware of. She makes really powerful commentary on the erasure, that is prevalent in these tools. So, these systems aren't neutral, and they don't really serve everyone equally. And
Mhm.
so in that way, I don't really think they can be relied on to craft your creative voice. That has to be so intrinsically part of you, for you to then begin working in these tools. So again, I see AI for sure, as a powerful medium. But I really do believe that your voice is crafted through learning, through experimenting, through living, talking to others, before you can get onto that AI canvas and start making really good work.
It's just like if you have a paintbrush and a canvas, what is put on the canvas is you, and what you come up with. That's kind of the differentiator there.
Yeah, and I think that's very exciting. I think it should hopefully calm people's fears about, if it's going to sort of like take over. Um, I think it's just going to really challenge people to figure out what their voice is before they start making work and putting work out.
Yeah,
And that I think is a good thing.
it's a whole nother thing too, finding your creative voice.
Yes, yes.
So, in talking about the future, what excites you most about where advertising and creative content are headed right now?
I mean, just like we were saying, I think in short, it's really going to become a lot more clear who has good ideas and who doesn't. So, now more than ever, it's like who has something to say and who doesn't, who has an interesting voice and who doesn't, who has taste, who has a point of view. You can feel, I think, a shift in the content that's being put out, that's made with these tools, and the kind of public reaction. Like, I think people are starting to be like, yeah, okay, so what? You made a really realistic video of someone landing on the moon. Why should we care?
Hmm.
So, I think again that excites me because I think we're going to weed out a lot of really bad work. I've seen a lot of really bad work come out of people experimenting, and which is totally, totally fine. But you can't stop there. You can't end with the experiment and think, okay, I've done it. I've made, a mid-journey film. So many people making mid-journey films. Oh my God, films loosely. Um, but yeah, it's like we're starting to whittle down to like who actually has something to say, which I love for us. And I think personally, I have been gravitating towards seeing human process work more than I ever have and appreciating human process work. Like I recently watched K-pop Demon Hunters. Brittany, have you watched?
I have not.
You haven't? Oh my God.
No.
Okay, it's the number one movie in the world right now.
Really? Oh my gosh, I can't
Yes.
believe I haven't heard about it.
Okay, you're gonna end this interview and go watch it. But it's an animated film. It like has skyrocketed to just the top. And I loved that when the film came out and people were talking about it, there was natural discourse online. So many of the artists, like the animators, the script writers, like everyone who worked on it, flooded the web with all of their process work, which I think was very smart on, the studio's part in allowing them to do all that, because I'm sure they had to ask permission. But, seeing all of the initial sketches, seeing the rough storyboards, I was like eating it up because it was really like seeing it all was like a masterclass in craft, in collaboration, and in creativity.
Mhm.
So I think that hunger for like a raw look at how things are made is really going to come back in like a big way. And that's not to say that using, AI tools doesn't involve this amount of process work, but I think it's also elevating, these human creators. I mean, look, we're all human creators. I've made incredible things with these tools, and it takes a lot of process work. But, this is just a totally different level. I mean, seeing the sketches, again, seeing the storyboards, where, a scene almost went, where it got scrapped, like all of that stuff is so fun. So this raw look at how things are made is really going to come back in a big way, I think. And I think it's also raising the bar across the board, not only for, the old way of doing things, but the new way of doing things as well. So that's very exciting.
Diana, this has been so wonderful. Thank you for all of your creative insight. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful.
You can find Diana at dianaweisman.com and on Instagram at dweismantrophy. Thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you. Bye.